Hey, I'm Olivia, she, her.
I'm Megan, she, they.
Hi, I'm Anise, she, her, hers.
And I'm Bella, she, her pronouns, and we are Hugh's Angels.
I think we should have like a sound effect where it's like just cheers.
I think he would like that.
So this week we are talking about Murder My Sweet and Pearl of Death. Murder My Sweet follows Philip Marlowe, who is originally hired to track down Velma, who is Moose's girlfriend, but gets involved with pretty much a robbery gone wrong, or so you think, and forms this whole web of convoluted plots to find jewels, and yes, very complex web, ultimately meeting his demise. Pearl of Death follows Sherlock Holmes as he tries to recover a very valuable pearl, and also the murders that happen while the investigation is going on. So now we're going to talk about the differences between the two detectives.
Okay. Wait, you start. Go ahead.
Okay. I would say one difference, a big difference generally, is that in Noir, the protagonist, even if he is like an investigator, becomes involved in a crime somehow or starts to like blur the lines between investigator and criminal, versus like in a Sherlock whodunit sort of thing, there's usually a big divide between like the criminals and the investigators. Like I don't think Sherlock would ever really involve himself that fully in like a crime as much as a Noir protagonist might.
Yeah, I agree. That's sort of like the common theme that we've seen in the past films where they're intertwined with the crime and they're somehow involved. They accidentally get themselves involved every time, whether that's like the criminals going to them and being like, hey, we need your help. And then all of a sudden, like they're sort of in it. And Holmes is just he's like, Megan had brought up this point. He comes in from the outside. So he's not so intertwined. But here in the other movie, we see him definitely more involved than Holmes does. And there's like Holmes has this confidence in him that I would say like the other detective doesn't as well.
Yeah, and like an example of that from Murder My Sweet is like obviously Marlowe gets asked to investigate about this missing jade and is asked to protect Marriott and everything like that. And then is also asked by Helen/Velma to kill Amthor, I think it was. And so like that's how he's literally getting into it. But luckily, unlike the other films that we've seen, he doesn't actually kill people for the femme fatale. So
yeah, I think in terms of their personality, like obviously Marlowe is that classic hard-boiled. He's definitely very much thrown into the hot water of the situation and multiple situations, whereas Holmes can remain very stoic, very like he's just very intelligent. He knows what's going on all along, and it's kind of just about figuring out all the pieces. Whereas with Marlowe, he like the other noir PIs, is aware that he does not know what's going on and kind of just has to figure out all the convoluted webs of situations that are going on. And yeah.
I think that's also a big part of the characters prior to the movie itself. As Noir protagonists, oftentimes there's this idea that they're sort of just maybe not like your regular guy, but they're sort of like they're just a private investigator who happens to stumble upon this like huge murder plot, versus Sherlock has this reputation. Like every Sherlock sort of whodunit thing you see is going to be some huge high profile case, and like he knows kind of exactly what he's getting into every single time.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say it's all really about experience, and I think that's where the confidence comes in and the knowledge comes in, and that's that in a film noir is, well, based off of what we've seen before, is unusual to have like that experience, at least for like huge cases. And that's why it's really common in film noir to see these detectives not really knowing how to avoid being in the actual, like, while the crime is taking place, they don't know how to avoid that. Whereas Holmes, he just comes across like he's had several experiences with this, and that's really where his knowledge comes in, and that's, you know, where his confidence comes in as well.
Yeah. A really big difference that I noticed, that we were kind of talking about is that, like, in Murder My Sweet, it's kind of not completely serious. Obviously, there's like some little lines, kind of like hard-boiled line dialogue, that's thrown in there. And then with the Pearl of Death, I actually thought it was funny. Like, I actually laughed out loud, especially at the disguises, and also like the like how Sherlock is like always a step ahead of Lestrade, I think is how you pronounce it. But yeah, I really liked how like there was actual comedy with Sherlock and with Watson, and then with, I don't know, I kind of thought that Murder My Sweet was a little boring, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think like the difference in like those investigation scenes, like in Pearl of Death, it's very like what you would expect from Holmes of like you know, Lestrade is explaining like this is how it happened, like then this happened, then this happened, and Holmes is like, you know, he negates all of that and shows the truth, and it's just kind of everyone acts as like almost a foil to him of like they're kind of bumbling, like definitely Watson is like the biggest foil to him of like kind of, you know, he doesn't really know what's going on. There's a scene in the beginning where Holmes is like looking into the mirror and Watson is like to the side of him, he can't see him, and he's describing essentially exactly what Watson is doing. He's like, oh, your hand is, he's like asking him to open something, and he's describing exactly what he's doing, just showing that like he has this almost like godly knowledge of what is going on because he's able to just kind of like zoom completely out and see the situation, whereas Marlowe like is in the center of it. So I think that really like the positioning of the characters is really what is a very big difference.
Yeah, I would say that's also very like intertwined with how the film makes us like the protagonists, because Noir, obviously we like to see this kind of almost scrappy, like he's very cool, he's very collected, but at the same time we like to see him sort of figure it out and we like to see him struggle sort of. Sherlock is just kind of a douche and he spends the whole time like dunking on everyone else because no one knows as much as he knows, and that's also funny to watch, I think. And I think it's interesting because it's very opposite to each other.
It's weird because, like, with Marlowe, especially right at the end when he's like actually putting together how Helen and Velma, same person, and also how she is the mastermind behind everything. Like, we don't really see the progress of him like learning that. I feel like it's just like a lot of things happen, and then suddenly he's like standing next to her and he's like, oh yeah, I knew that. But with Sherlock, I feel like we go through every single step with him and we like see his thought process, like especially when he was in the office in the museum and he pushed over that bowl of balls or whatever, and then like distracted everyone to be able to like prove to the people at the museum that it was easy to rob the place. So like you go through everything with Sherlock, and then with Marlowe, you're just like, wait, what? Like, how did he get to that point? So,
Yeah, I think like especially in like the opening scenes of both of the films, in Pearl of Death, like we are not even with Holmes at all. We're watching like what's going on the boat and how like Naomi's obviously doing something suspicious. The Pearl is not where the Pearl is supposed to be. We're getting like exposition that we don't really get in Murder My Sweet because again we're following pretty like directly as Marlowe, and how he doesn't know what's going on, and we kind of we miss the like the moments that he would also miss. We don't see Mary get killed because we're following what Marlowe is doing, whereas in Pearl of Death we're able to see the different angles of what different characters are doing. Obviously not all of them, but significantly more than in Murder My Sweet.
kind of going back to like the whole comedy thing, I think that also makes the Pearl of Death more campy. I said before the disguises, I loved them. I loved that Sherlock was on the boat as a priest and then came home and was just like wiping his makeup off. And then I loved that Conover came in and was dressed up as an old man and just like was trying to kill Sherlock with a knife in a book. Like, what? I don't know. I thought those were really funny and pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that Noir is definitely it's obviously a lot more suspenseful than the Sherlock movies. Like, from the Sherlock, you know who did it, sort of, and like you would like finding out at the end, but it's not like you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. It's kind of more fun to just follow the characters and like watch the interesting, funny, and very like intricate ways that they try and fool each other.
Yeah, I think like Noir, overall, like especially in relation to like sexuality, is so much more like, not only is it more emotional and psychological, but obviously there is the element of sex and affairs and infidelity. Whereas in the Holmes movies, it's totally like that's not even like that practically doesn't even exist in that reality of the film. And there's less drama in that way, which makes it also less suspenseful. Of there's not really like no one is as emotionally involved as they are in noirs. And I think that's also a big difference.
So would everyone say that Holmes is like an easier watch because of that aspect, right?
In terms of plot, for sure, of like just how things happen, I mean, Murder My Sweet, I think, is especially convoluted even for a noir of like all the characters and all the different plot lines. But yeah, definitely in terms of plot, Pearl of Death is much more straightforward in my opinion.
Yeah, there were definitely a couple parts in Murder My Sweet that I was like, wait, what's going on? Especially like when Marlowe gets drugged. And like, yeah, the whole smoke and like all that, and him being in like a sanatorium or whatever. I was just very confused. And there were so many new characters getting introduced, like all the time. I started to get some of them confused. But like, yeah, so I definitely thought that the Pearl of Death was easier to follow.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think like sorry.
No, you finished. Yeah.
I was gonna say like in Murder My Sweet with the drugging scene, like I think like one, like that's a situation that would just never happen to Holmes because he is very much in control, and that never like gets away from him, whereas Marlowe was just kind of being thrown about. And also like formalistically, like with the like the smoke that's covering like the camera, that's something that is definitely not going to exist in like the whodunit genre of like kind of the and like that whole scene with the images and walking through the doors, like that's very like experimental, like formalistically, whereas the whodunit genre is still much more like conventional, straightforward type of thing.
Yeah, I really like the point about like the Sherlock character having a lot more control over, because I think that ties in very well to the idea of not really having a lot of women in the genre. Like Sherlock is not controlled by his sexuality in the way that noir protagonists are. And obviously there's no women really in Pearl of Death other than Naomi, and she doesn't really interact with Sherlock that much, and she definitely doesn't influence him in the way that a femme fatale would a noir protagonist. And I think it's interesting because like femme fatale is a very noir like concept, and I did warn everyone I was going to reference the Sherlock show, but I think it's a very good depiction of his character. Is that like Hugh, if you've seen it, like the Irene Adler character is kind of the biggest female character, and it's interesting because she's sort of the femme fatale. She's like the smart woman with agency, and she doesn't really have the effect on Sherlock that it would on a noir protagonist. But I think it's cool to see, not cool to see a lack of women, but I think it's strange to see a genre where women aren't really portrayed as evil, because women aren't really portrayed at all.
Yeah, I think that's also like noir obviously has women, but they are evil. Like whodunit just doesn't have them at all. It's kind of like in that way, like noir, I guess, is a step in the right direction, but also like like obviously does, like I think the aspect of agency for the femme fatale is really big, like in a lot of noirs and also in Murder My Sweet, like they are often the ones that are really controlling things behind the scenes, but obviously at the same time like they are evil and portrayed in a very negative light, so it's kind of give and take.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's Naomi and then like their maid or something like that are the only two female characters in the Pearl of Death. So that's really interesting. And like literally in any film noir movie, Naomi would be instantly attractive to any of the detectives, the officers, whatever. Um, and Sherlock had literally no thoughts about her other than let's catch her. Like, oh, she messed up, like, and wrote down the like different name, and I caught that because it's different handwriting or whatever. So yeah.
I don't know if I would necessarily say like that she would be interested, because all I'm thinking about is like film noir, and women in film noir come across as they're interested, but they're really using that to their advantage. Like they're taking advantage of the fact that men are so like infatuated with the idea of like sex that they take advantage of that. You know what I mean? Like the women are never really actually interested. At least that's what I've always thought. They're not really like genuinely interested, but rather like they know that these investigators are going to fall to like to them, which is they use their sexuality as like their advantage.
Yeah, there's no way that she would have been attracted to Holmes, that like it would have, if it was a film noir, it would have been like him or Watson or Lestrade or however you pronounce it. I'm so bad at pronouncing names, but like one of them would be attracted to her and she would have like no feelings for them, just like using them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons that Sherlock characters don't have a romantic interest most of the time is, instead of driven by sexuality, he's purely driven by knowledge and the desire to be genuinely like omniscient, all-knowing. Like he doesn't want sex, he just wants to be like, I think that it's kind of this idea of not a perfect person, but someone who is not like, they're not influenced by their sexuality at all. And I think that that's something that people see as a flaw, sort of like a lustful person almost. And so Sherlock is kind of the antithesis of that.
Yeah, I think like corruption is something that just would never, like Holmes has the inability to be corrupted. He is completely, like you said, driven by this case, by the fact that he knows what's going on, by figuring it out and then proving it to everyone that he knows more than them. Whereas in noirs, in Murder My Sweet with Marlowe, like the corruption is almost immediate as he is pulled into the schemes that are going on. So I think that like theme of corruption is really just completely removed from the whodunit genre.
Although I'm pretty sure one of like not the Holmes character type, but specifically to Holmes, is he also like a drug addict? Like in the general, like all of his books and movies and everything, I'm pretty sure he is a drug addict, and like that's his like thing, is not sex, but like he does have like this very strong vice. But I don't know, I'm pretty sure that that's true as far as like all the Sherlock stories, but I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I don't think I have enough knowledge, but that's very interesting to then like kind of think about that.
You like undermine the lust of sex with the lust of stimulants, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting.
Back to what we're actually talking about.
If we want to like talk about Murder My Sweet with like romance and stuff, one scene that I thought, I didn't talk about this yet, right? That I thought was like one of my like biggest scenes that stood out to me with like romance in this film was when Marlowe showed up to the beach house with Anne, because he was with her before having dinner or whatever, and then ends up kissing Helen/Velma by the end of the scene. And I thought that was kind of funny how like the romance between Murder My Sweet and the Pearl of Death are completely different, because he's with like two women kind of in like one scene, and Holmes is with no one. I didn't say that yet, right? Okay,
good. Yeah, I think like also like if romance, I guess, kind of were to exist in the Holmes universe, it would definitely be like in a pure good way. Like not only does romance like and sexuality exist in the noir genre, but it's in a very like perverse way, and like it's always like infidelity and affairs, and then like usually like death of either person or all, like depending on the film.
Yeah, I think that the scene in the beach house is actually a really, really funny scene to me in that it just has like the good girl character and the femme fatale absolutely, it's very much like they're just explaining those two character types to each other. I thought that that was so funny to watch because it's like oh, you're pretty but you're evil, and the other one's like, oh well, you're dumb. Like it's just like their kind of very basic level character archetypes.
I think a scene that was in Pearl of Death that was just like it didn't mirror like the ridiculousness or craziness of the drugging scene, but when the bench is like thrown through the window after I didn't already talk about this, right? I feel like okay. When like after Holmes has proven how easy it is to steal from the museum, like what occurs is like I feel like that is a very like campy moment. But I wouldn't consider like the drugging scene camp. I feel like film noir, like because it's so like psychological and gritty and deep, like has a very like deep like understanding of what the film is doing, which like is not camp. So I think um Pearl of Death, because it just kind of like has these very like outrageous moments, but it doesn't really seem like there's much like subtext to them. I think that is what makes it much more campy and just kind of like and comical and silly to watch. Like also the scene where Lestrade like is trying to find the message in the food and he spills it on his face. Like it's just like silly moments that not only prove that like the other characters are kind of dumb compared to Holmes, but also that there's just like a lack of subtext that that noir films have.
Yeah, I love the little message that Conover left Lestrade in the teapot. I thought that was really funny.
That was good. Yeah, I think that it's cool that in the whodunit, even if they are having these characters purely to show them as lesser than Holmes, you don't dislike the characters. Like they're still fun to watch and they're still good characters.
Yeah, like with Lestrade, like you don't really dislike him because he's not really doing anything too terrible to Holmes, but Lieutenant Randall in Murder My Sweet was kind of more like annoying and like you don't like him as much. Not that I loved Marlowe, but like you're obviously supposed to like him more than Lieutenant Randall because he's like more annoying and is like always trying to catch Marlowe slipping up. So, but yeah, Lestrade is like does it in a funnier way, obviously, because it's more campy.
Yeah, I think like the likability of the characters is really interesting because I think like without knowledge you might think, oh, like the the Sherlock Holmes character who done it genre, that must be more likable because he is like potential drug addiction aside, potentially, well, not that makes him a bad person, but he has he's intelligent, he's in control of the situation. But I think really like I'm personally much more emotionally invested in the noir films because it's interesting, it's dramatic. You really don't know what is going to happen next, even though like you still know that it doesn't turn out well, you still are very much invested in like how these like webs like unfold. Whereas the Holmes movie Pearl of Death, it's less like fulfilling in the end than Murder My Sweet, in my opinion.
Yeah.
How are we doing on? Sorry. No. I was just gonna say, how are we doing on time?
We're about 24 minutes. We have like 6 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to talk about? Do we have like
I have one more thing.
Yeah, go.
I was just say like the overall like tone of the film and like the attitude of you and also of the protagonists. I think in Pearl of Death, like we know that it's like that the outcome will be Holmes is doing, it will be good, things will resolve. There's kind of this positive, like, we're going to solve the case attitude. Whereas in Noir, it's very, very cynical, very kind of just like inevitable doom. So I think like the whole demeanor of both the protagonists and the film are very, very different. That was my last one.
Okay, so for our ending segment, we are going to do who we think would be Hugh's best friend. And we specifically picked from Murder My Sweet, and we decided on Mrs. Florian. So Mrs. Florian is the wife of the owner of the Florian Club, or whatever I guess you would call it. She was only in it for a little bit, but so that's why we thought we could like kind of put together her story. So who wants to go first?
She's definitely, she is like, she was the one that like tipped like Velma off that she was, or Helen, that she was being like looked for. But other than that, she doesn't really have like a huge involvement in that specific plot. But I feel like she, like, like Marnie, she's doing something suspicious. That club, it could be a front. We don't know. Who knows what's going on? So I think that she's involved in something. And she's a good actor. So she can fool anyone.
Well, let's be honest though, a lot of the like mystery crime film that has like a club, they're usually selling drugs like in the back. You know what I mean? That's
That could be it.
She could be selling drugs back there.
I think maybe. I mean, my queen, Miss Florian, she is definitely into her alcohol. So I wouldn't be surprised if she was into drugs too. Like, she could handle her stuff. I was not gonna swear right there. Like, she was kind of like chugging that whiskey and was like acting like she was wasted, but was completely fine on the phone. So either she was doing the little like over the shoulder trick, or like she's just really good at hiding it. And then I feel like maybe she could have been on Broadway or like off Broadway because she was so good at acting.
Yeah, maybe like a former star gone like corrupted like old lady or something. I think that could be her backstory. Like, she's seen the dark depths of Broadway and now she's forever scarred.
Ooh, maybe. Okay, I am totally blanking on whether we find out. I shouldn't say this considering Rhiannon is going to see me say this, but I'm totally blanking on whether or not we find out why Helen and Velma had the name switch. So maybe like people who, like criminals. Oh, my Mac's out, did I? If my Mac dies, this is my last words. There's like people who are like criminals come to the club and work for the club, and in the club they help them set up new identities and new like they like have to start fake identities and then go off. They like stop working at the club when they're ready to go like get married or do whatever and like settle into these like new, it's like the opposite of a witness protection program. Like witness protection for criminals.
Yeah, film noir witness protection. I think that is definitely possible.
Oh my gosh.
That's good. I didn't even think about that. That's good.
Unless,
and then
unless it does mention why she has a new identity, in which case scratch all that, and I'm really done at watching this.
I also wanted to do a special little shout out to Moose. Moose is probably my favorite character in Murder My Sweet, because like, why was he so big? Like, I looked up his actual height in real life and he was only 6'5". Like, I know 6'5" people, and they don't see, well, I mean, yeah, but like I've seen 6'5" people and they don't even seem like that big, I guess. But he literally looked like he was the Green Giant. Like,
maybe they had the camera like facing up at him the whole time.
Yeah.
He definitely did. And they were like, his hands were huge. Like, only these like massive hands could have broken his neck so easily. And I was like, oh my
I love
God.
I love the thought of like him and Marlo doing like, oh my god, my hand's so small compared to
That's so good. So yeah, I feel like maybe that like Moose would be Hugh's friend from like childhood, and they knew each other when they were in like kindergarten, and Moose was already like 5'10". So like that's what I imagine.
Oh my god.
Well,
Oh wait, also I drew this. Oh wait, it's gonna be backwards, but it says Hugh's
Oh,
Angel.
love it. No, it's perfect. It's not
That's so
backwards. It's
cute.
good. I love it.
Oh yeah.
It's
my
inverted
t-shirts.
on
Yeah,
ours, so
yeah.
it shows up. Love it.
That's
All right,
our
well,
logo.
yes, we're at time, so I'm gonna
Yes.
stop recording.